Hey, the beat go off?
I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP. I don't drink, I don't cuss. I wanna ride on the front of the bus. I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP. I wanna eat where the white folks eat, 'cause I'm white on the bottom of my feet. I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP. We don't screw like the black folks do. We just screw till we get through. I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP.
Hey, the beat go off?
I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP. I don't drink, I don't cuss. I wanna ride on the front of the bus. I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP. I wanna eat where the white folks eat, 'cause I'm white on the bottom of my feet. I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP. We don't screw like the black folks do. We just screw till we get through. I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP.
Hey, the beat go off?
I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP. I don't drink, I don't cuss. I wanna ride on the front of the bus. I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP. I wanna eat where the white folks eat, 'cause I'm white on the bottom of my feet. I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP. We don't screw like the black folks do. We just screw till we get through. I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP.
Hey, the beat go off?
I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP. I don't drink, I don't cuss. I wanna ride on the front of the bus. I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP. I wanna eat where the white folks eat, 'cause I'm white on the bottom of my feet. I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP. We don't screw like the black folks do. We just screw till we get through. I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP.
Hey, the beat go off?
I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP. I don't drink, I don't cuss. I wanna ride on the front of the bus. I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP. I wanna eat where the white folks eat, 'cause I'm white on the bottom of my feet. I'm an Alabama nigger and I wanna be free. Hell with the NAACP.
Warning. The following video contains...
Here we are in the middle of fucking nowhere. Oh, there's the first customer for the day. Come here. Hey buddy, caught you napping. Your ship is sunk, punk. Alright, come here. Enough of this bullshit. Oh, I'll get in with you, I guess. Ramming speed. While they're busy with their swimming lessons, I gotta finish the job here. I mean, they're not even landing any hits anymore. I mean,
released a video discussing Minecraft AI being tested here on the oldest Anarchy server in Minecraft. Well, since that video, there's been some developments. Baritone bots can kill people now. They learn from each engagement that they fight in. These aren't just pathfinding bots anymore. They are capable of utilizing pure reinforcement learning and self-improvement to become emotionless killing machines. Footage has surfaced of a player being massacred by a swarm of bots, all moving together as one using synchronous movement. It's actually scary. We are about to reach the point of no return. The point where things on 2B2T are going to change forever. There's no fancy intro today. Let's get right into it. This all started not too long ago when an update to Baritone was released. It improved the ability for bots to pathfind at bedrock level. Since a lot of fighting on Anarchy servers occurs on the bedrock layer, this was a huge development. Bedrock movement requires precise jumping, and previously, there was no easy way to automate it. This advancement in the technology was seen as a great addition to the Baritone project. This addition was contributed by a user by the name of Connor. But after this update went public, some unusual things started happening on the server. Not too long ago, there was a report of a player being attacked by what appeared to be a swarm of PvP bots. The player said that when he was attacked, he was almost killed, and was only able to escape because of pearls. The bots moved across bedrock in ways that human players could not. At first, this claim was brushed off. None of us thought that Baritone bots were capable of doing something that advanced, let alone being able to learn combat techniques. But 2 nights ago, our fears became reality when footage surfaced of a player being killed by AI-controlled opponents. So I'm going to narrate this footage as it happens, so that way you casual observers out there will actually know what's going on. So this player is on Constantium right now, and the Constantium spawn is pretty much the same as 2B2T in that the bedrock layer is exposed completely. But the player sees another account at bedrock layer and approaches. As this player approaches, the bot comes out of hiding and instantly tries to get out of reach of the player. Now at this point, the bot is just maintaining that distance, so whenever the player approaches, it automatically backs up, and using that bedrock pathfinding I spoke about earlier, it perfectly gets away from the player that's chasing it. Now it can move backwards while keeping eye contact with the player at all times. In fact, as it gets closer to lava up here, you'll see that in order to avoid the lava, it'll actually bridge going backwards without even looking. Watch this. Just whips out the obsidian and just right away, out of arm's reach. Now, unknown to the player, that bot is actually calling for backup. A swarm of bots is en route to this exact location, and as you can see on those tracers, they've all arrived. They are moving with synchronous movement, kill aura engaged. All of them are going to attack as a single unit. This is the first time that footage like this has been released to the public. This has never been seen before in Minecraft, period. These PvP bots make quick work of this player, and unfortunately, against the machines, he stood no chance. This sets a dangerous precedence on Anarchy servers and Minecraft in general. Rumor began to spread that the user, Connor, who had updated the bedrock pathfinding, was behind these combat tests. I've been in touch with the lead developer of Baritone, Lejerve, for a while, and he mentioned something very interesting in regards to Connor. He won't tell me much since he stopped committing to the main public fork, but there's some crazy modifications to a closed source fork of Baritone that adds new capabilities and leans much more heavily on pure reinforcement learning and self-improvement. Specifically, it greatly expands what parts of Baritone are controlled by machine learning algorithms, to the point where vast swaths of it have been replaced with a neural network, resulting in huge benefits. Now, as of right now, that fork is still private and not available to the public. But should this advancement become available to the public, what's to stop factions, PvP squads, and other groups from using these bots to fight for them? Any Minecraft account could be turned into a killing machine instantly. Wars fought using AI opponents with players sprinkled in there just trying to survive. We are looking at something that could change 2B2T as we know it. 16. Resistance and continuing to kill rushers. Anyone that's familiar with the oldest Anarchy server in Minecraft knows exactly what the players here are capable of. When you have a server with no rules and is nearly a decade old, there's going to be some conflict.
Living all this pitch black stillness, feel lawless, my mind's darkest. My purpose is to get my target until I check off everybody on my list. But somehow this is like a circus. I'm gliding all of y'all done at my service. Please get ready for some disturbance, but this is what you get for your purchase. I am an agent of the darkness. Now there's nobody else, just us. Do or die, it's real toughness. Feel the wrath of an outlaw locked up. The security guards, the king's here, so come here. Become the king of the kingdom over here. Do it how you want it, however you like it. This is the place to be.
The incursions. 7 of them have occurred since 2B2T began in 2010. Some were major success stories, others were total failures. What is an incursion? Well, think of it as a group of players coming together to take control of the server or to accomplish a goal. But it's a little more complicated than that. But don't worry, by the end of this video, you will completely understand. We'll discuss the history of each of the 7 incursions and also discuss what may happen in the future in regards to them. There's a lot to cover today, so let's get started. The incursions are split into 2 separate eras. 1 through 3 are considered the classic incursions. These incursions happened before the influence of YouTube on 2B2T, meaning that there is very little footage of these events, only screenshots. 4 through 7 are considered the modern incursions. These incursions were much larger in pretty much every regard, and were mostly the result of YouTube influence. Because of this, there are countless hours of footage from all of these conflicts. Each incursion taught the 2B2T community a lesson in one way or another, and all 7 lessons will be mentioned after their respective incursions. Starting with... Let me bring you back to the year 2013. There was a group of players on 2B2T from a base called Valkyria. These players decided one day that they wanted to travel to spawn in order to do something that an organized group had never done before. Take control of the wasteland at 0-0. A spawn invasion. The Valkyrians set up camp at 2K2K, the last remaining city from the Face Punch era, and used it as a base of operations in order to control spawn. Being so close, the group was able to do regular patrols, killing any players that stood in their way, and befriending some of the more advanced players they encountered. Housemaster, the admin of 2B2T, had recently flattened spawn in an attempt to eliminate lag, so the patrols had a very large area to work with. The Valkyrians called it the Spawn Invasion, and it lasted only a week. That's right, the term incursion had not been invented yet. as the term would be applied to this event retroactively at a later date. While the members of Valkyria had fun with their little invasion, they realized just how challenging a spawn occupation actually was, and the leader of the group, Sato86, felt that the invasion wasn't exactly a success. It had failed to accomplish its goal. The first incursion may have been a failure, but it showed that players could band together on a server with no rules to try and accomplish something, if only they had greater numbers. But the lesson learned from the first incursion was that lacking objectives and goals would make players disorganized, and they would lose interest in a community event very quickly. A few months later, a post about 2B2T went viral on the Minecraft subreddit, and at the same time, an IGN video was released about 2B2T, which caused a new wave of players to join the server. At the time, it was considered enough new players for the members of Valkyria to once again call for a spawn invasion. Remembering what they had learned from the previous invasion, they brought more members and had pre-planned goals. These included rebuilding spawn roads, protecting the NFE spawn base, protecting other structures such as spawn beacons, and of course, killing the invading new players. This spawn invasion lasted 2 months, much longer than the original. Overall, this second spawn invasion was considered a success, and the first true takeover of 2B2T's spawn region. The lesson learned from the second incursion was that having goals helped maintain player presence at spawn and kept them busy with their own tasks. It cemented the path for goal-driven incursions in the future. However, 2 months was too long for an incursion, and it led to the exhaustion of the players involved. It would be another 2 years before the community came together again for another incursion. In 2015, after the largest base on the server at the time, Asgard 2, was griefed, the community of nearly 30 players living together were upset and needed to take their anger out on something. Many of the base members were ex-members of Valkyria, and they decided that it was time for another incursion. The previous 2 spawn invasions were renamed to incursions, and the third incursion planning was well underway. But this time, things would change. The third incursion was different than the previous 2 for a few reasons. First, it was the first incursion to have a deadline. A deadline would ensure that the event did not go longer than 1 month, preventing player burnout. The first incursion to allow players from outside the Valkyrian Legion circle. Many of the members of Asgard 2 were strong fighters, builders, and thinkers. It made sense to have them involved. And it was the first incursion to have a community build project. It was decided that a community build project would help cement the incursion's takeover of spawn and give the members something to protect. What was the build? Wrath Outpost, a giant base made entirely out of obsidian. It took a couple of weeks to be fully completed, but once it was finished, it was the largest spawn base ever built. Since withers were disabled on 2B2T during much of 2015, it was almost impossible to grief. Incursion members patrolled the base round the clock, and using spawn eggs, ghasts were spawned in as aerial support to attack invaders. Using Wrath as the spawn outpost, the incursion had total control of spawn. It was a complete success, and after 1 month, the incursion came to a close. The lesson learned was that by setting a deadline, it gave the people involved a sense of urgency, which made all members more productive. It also allowed newer members a way to prove themselves and be useful. I'll always have a soft spot for the third incursion since it was the first one I was part of. The end of the third incursion marked the end of an era. The classic incursions had come and gone. Nearly a year later, the YouTube invasion of 2B2T would begin, and with it, a new era of incursions. When the Camping Rusher made his now famous video about 2B2T, his fans flooded the server in magnitudes never before seen. his fans were called the Rushers and began rushing 2B2T. The old player base was completely outnumbered and had no choice but to either fight back or quit. The Rusher War was inevitable. I started the Team Veteran Initiative in order to rally some of the old players and also convert new players to our side, while Sato and the other old Incursion members began organizing in case a new incursion had to be called. We tricked the incoming players into fighting each other under the guise of Team Veteran versus Team Rusher. While many of us were fighting on the front lines at spawn every day, it just wasn't enough. There were just too many new players. While we were able to dispose of most Diamond Rushers with relative ease, a group of new players began to rise to power seemingly out of nowhere. They called themselves the Resistance. They were a team of rushers that were far more skilled in combat than any of the other new players. They had legitimate PvP background and fought in teams, outnumbering lone veterans they came across. They managed to defeat some of the old players by catching them off guard, including Burnsy and Sato. The new players were overwhelming, 2B2T culture was not being respected, and now, longtime players were being singled out and attacked. That was the final straw. The old community came together again, and the fourth incursion truly began. For the first time, the incursion was willing to take in new players if they had something useful to contribute or had certain skills, such as Basti VC's bomber airships or San Wukan's lag machines. By using social engineering, hacking, and brute force, all resistance supply stashes were wiped out, and in July of 2016, late one summer evening, the incursion banded together and carried out a raid on the Resistance's main base. The place was a crater by the time the incursion had finished destroying everything. In the weeks leading up to my duel with the camping Rusher, the 4th incursion continued to fight at spawn, weakening the Resistance and continuing to kill Rushers. While this was happening, though, a new form of combat was emerging: crystal combat. End crystal explosions were so powerful that they could kill any player with only 1 or 2 explosions, even with God Apples. This effectively turned traditional PvP battles into kamikaze runs. None of the sides were prepared for this kind of change in the combat meta, and the incursion began having trouble maintaining control of spawn. A few days after I won my duel against the camping Rusher, both sides of the conflict re-geared for one final confrontation at spawn. This would be the last true battle of the Rusher War. Corrupted Unicorn, the leader of the Resistance, unexpectedly switched sides before the battle and was ready to fight alongside the incursion. Both sides met near spawn and began fighting. Some end crystals were used, but the majority of the combatants used traditional weapons. The battle lasted almost an entire hour and ended with Rusher and company fleeing the battle, but still surviving. This would go down as the last major battle in 2B2T history that still used traditional PvP weapons. Summer came to a close. Fit MC. What's going on, everybody? This is Fit MC, and today there's something we need to discuss about 2B2T. Now, I've debated making this video for about 2 years, but I never had a reason to delve into this topic until recently. There is so much that I have to tell you. I hope you're sitting down for this, because it's time to tell you about the history of 2B2T that has been kept secret from you, intentionally, by myself and by others. Today, we're going to talk about the day 2B2T almost died, and how the oldest anarchy server in Minecraft isn't actually an anarchy server. We're going to talk about a history of backdoor access, lies and deceit, and the server event that almost killed 2B2T for good. When it comes to discussing the history of the server, I have not been entirely honest with you over the past 2 years, and I've left out some key details for reasons I'm going to explain later in the video. But let me tell you why I've decided to finally make this video. House, if you're watching this right now, I just want to say that I appreciate that you've kept 2B2T running all of these years, and I hope you will not be mad and rather understand why I've brought this up. The 2B2T player base, the FitMC fans, and all the players that have quit 2B2T deserve to know the truth about this place. Now, a few weeks ago, I posted this image to the 2B2T subreddit. It's a screenshot I had taken after I'd slept in a bed in order to skip the night on the server, which is a really rare occurrence. This was taken on 2B in late April of 2016, about 2 months before the Camping Rusher made his famous 2B2T video. The image was 100% upvoted on the subreddit, which surprised me since the subreddit hates YouTubers. But in the image, you'll notice I am the only player online. That's right, the only player online on 2b2t.org. And that's because the majority of the player base had quit. That's right, that was a normal evening on 2B. I was the only player online. Most of the players had quit because of the drama that went down in 2016, and it almost killed the server. Housemaster deleted this post after only 30 minutes, and I thought it was strange that a historical image like this would get swept under the rug just because I had mentioned spring of 2016. This already should be a red flag. Sato posted some memes to the subreddit a few days later, and one of his images just happened to mention the back door of 2016. Meme posts are normally kept up if they have a little bit of effort put into them, and Sato definitely put the effort in, but Housemaster also deleted this post. It is clear to me that Housemaster has been actively censoring posts about this topic on the subreddit. It's clear he's trying to hide what went down in the spring of 2016, but YouTube is my platform, and he can't censor me here. It's time all of you knew the truth. I'm going to be using Sato's timeline to put these events into chronological order. While Sato's timeline, it's not perfect, and there are some issues with it, it is the best one to use for reference in this video. It's the most widely accepted one by the community. This one's a little outdated. This one only goes to 2017, and I know Sato's currently working on the current one, but anyway, with all that being said, this is when 2B was founded. This is when I became a server regular. And then this is where all this drama began, 2014. I was just a 2B2T player at that point. I was not a YouTuber. I was just a normal player just like you, before the server was world famous. In July of 2014, a strange message appeared on the 2B2T website. Yeah, that's right, 2B2T, it used to have a website, and it was run by House. It was paid for by the players. It was a legitimate website. But Housemaster had left this message. It says, Housemaster has left 2B2T forever and is no longer in charge. The server will continue like normal though, and will be operated by an anonymous friend. Now this.
Hey guys, what's up? It is your boy Saya, and today, or actually for the last couple days, 2B2T has been down. So I experimented on Constantium for a little bit last night, and the lag was really bad. And I've seen memes online of it being called Conslagium and stuff like that. So there's another anarchy server called Oldfag.org that recently came back online. It was an older anarchy server that was down for a while, I guess, but it just started back up, and it's got a new map going, and we're gonna hop in this world and see if we can escape spawn tonight. So let's go ahead, jump in the world and see what is going on. And we are at spawn right now. I'm gonna openly check my coordinates, and oh, okay, it's actually pretty easy to escape, I guess. I don't see any players around me. There's not that much destruction yet. It's a new map. It's probably like 2 days old so far. and it pretty much has a lot of the same things going for it that 2B2T has for it. Oh shit, it's a couple players. Oh, there's a lot of players around here. I might get killed, but we're gonna see if we can like cut some wood. And something that I actually have seen about this server is that the AI for mobs is much like better than on 2B2T, because on 2B2T it pretty much is non-existent. Like the lag is so bad with like entity AI that yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, we want to get a little bit out of spawn and X-ray hack to get some diamonds, because this is a new world. Having diamonds at all means you're like a step ahead of a lot of people, because there are probably a lot of people on here not using hack clients. Okay guys, we've made it a few thousand blocks out of spawn, and I think it's about time we start X-ray blocking for some diamonds. So we're just gonna find a location to start doing that. Okay guys, so we are setting up some full diamond armor, and yeah, we got some stuff to work with for the world for right now. Not completely naked. Let's make a pickaxe, and we've got enough left over for a sword as well. We can go ahead and leave an extra one in there, and then all we gotta do is drop one right there. Alright, so I think that's it for the video for the day, guys. We got full diamond on Oldfag in the first. We got a Bailey, we got a Paniner. Hey guys, what's up? It's your boy Saya, and welcome back for another video on the oldfag.org anarchy server. This video is an update on the most recent server event on Oldfag, the second spawn crusade. If you are not aware of the events up to now, I suggest watching my previous video, which I will also link in the description below. But anyway, let's get to business, guys. Since the last time I uploaded, PorkinBR has actually made a follow-up video to his first video on Oldfag, requesting his fans and viewers to invade Oldfag. This immediately increased the number of online players from 70-ish after his first video to reaching up to 100 players online. This increased player number has driven the Crusaders to vamp up every effort they've made to stop the Brazilian players from escaping spawn and getting established. Countless portals have been either trapped with obsidian or outright entirely destroyed, preventing naked players from accessing the nether highways to fast travel out of the spawn area. On top of this, Namey McNameface has been doing everything in his power to absolutely fill in the 600-600 wall with lava, preventing successful spawns by most naked players. In addition, many Brazilian bases have been compromised and griefed by such crusaders as Jin Crazy Killer, Namey McNameface, and Bro77. Interestingly enough, the Brazilians have actually created their own Discord to organize their own group efforts, boasting more members than the crusade itself. Despite their large numbers and the surprise switching of sides by SSJN, it doesn't seem that they've been able to get a proper footing on having a secure base on the server. Nevertheless, it's only a couple days into this conflict, and there is a strong possibility that a few of them have escaped the greater spawn area region and have established a safer location for themselves. Only time will tell realistically though. And the crusade has not been limited to conflict with the older players and the Brazilians though. There has been a fair amount of fighting amongst the older players themselves, with group PvP taking place at spawn. I'm not sure if this is because of personal quarrels or if it's because of anti-crusade efforts, but it has been happening on the sidelines of all the excitement of the Brazilian invasion. One final interesting event of the Second Crusade that is worth mentioning is the fact that John 2004-10 accidentally reverted a 10,000 block area in the spawn region to its original pristine state. This angered quite a few people, but it was quickly taken care of and repaired. And anyway, that's it for the video today, guys. My next video will be another update on the Second Crusade, and until then, I'll see you guys later. I'll have some clips playing after the commentary is done, but like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and have a great day, guys.
"3 years. Let's see how old Fitlantis is holding up, shall we?" It's been almost 3 years. Let's see how old Fitlantis is holding up, shall we? holding up, shall we? Fitlantis was the last major build project I completed here on the oldest Anarchy server in Minecraft, 2b2t. While I made the base as sort of a meme, as sort of a joke, it ended up being a unique concept for a few reasons. It was the first base in 2b2t history to be built entirely, from start to finish, on camera. I live streamed the entire construction process over the course of a month and a half. Viewers watching were able to give their input and also suggest ideas as it was being built. It was also the first base to be found using the bedrock exploit. Once construction was complete, famous exploiter and 2b2t player Chrome Crusher showed up at the base unannounced. He had taken screenshots of the bedrock from the live stream and compared the pattern to 2b2tc. Just a few pieces of bedrock were all he needed to find bases. I was so impressed that he had found the base. The battle every single Minecraft, the Dragon Egg. In every single Minecraft world, there is only one. If the egg is lost or destroyed, it's gone forever, with no way to get it back. Well, what if I told you that on the oldest Anarchy server in Minecraft, the Dragon Egg still exists? Despite the server being a decade old, the egg has managed to survive. But it almost didn't. The chaotic journey the Dragon Egg has taken on 2b2t is quite an unusual story. From the egg first being found, to its eventual use in exploits and as a weapon. You heard that right, a weapon. I have a lot of explaining to do today, so let's get started. When 2b2t began back in December of 2010, the Dragon Egg didn't exist yet. This is because the End Dimension and Ender Dragon were not added to Minecraft until late 2011. By the time Minecraft entered its 1.0 release phase, including the dragon fight, 2b2t was already almost a year old. In a normal Minecraft world, the End could be found by entering a portal in one of the 3 strongholds located near a world spawn region. Well, on 2b2t, the chunks where the strongholds were supposed to be had already been generated, meaning that the strongholds and their portals were missing. Players began asking the server's admin, Housemaster, if he had any intention of adding the portals. He said, no. It seemed that House insisted that 2b2t continue on as normal without admin interference, and without an End Dimension. But when you have a server with no rules, players will always find a way to accomplish a goal, especially one as lucrative as illegally entering the End Dimension. Near the end of 2011, 2b2t was backdoored, giving select players access to every single block in the game, including End portal frames. Pop Bob and Police Mike were among the first players to obtain the blocks. They traveled to the most established spawn base at the time, the NFE, and attempted to activate a portal deep underground. However, when they inserted the Eyes of Ender into the portal frames, nothing happened. They believed that House may have disabled End portals entirely, so they gave up on entering the dimension and abandoned their portal. Progress would stagnate for a while, until March of 2012, when longtime 2b2t player XCC2 came into possession of a stack of portal frames. XC believed that a Stronghold's portal room had to be recreated block for block in order to make the portal activate, so he went to the NFE and built an exact replica of a Stronghold's portal room underground, not far from where Pop Bob and Mike's failed portal was. XC invited Police Mike to help him finish the replica portal room. After placing all the blocks correctly and inserting the Eyes of Ender into the frames, to their surprise, the portal ignited. Pop Bob and Mike's original portal was not aligned properly, so nothing happened when they placed the eyes. Sounds like a funny situation, but remember that End portal frames as a block were not obtainable in survival, so tutorials on how to create portals were basically non-existent in 2011 and early 2012. Still in shock that the portal worked, XCC2 and Police Mike stepped in and became the first players in 2b2t history to generate the End Dimension. After standing around watching the dragonfly, they realized that they had jumped into the portal without the proper gear to fight, so they jumped off the End Island so that they could prepare. XCC2 invited his friend JDW9966 to help him slay the dragon. Armed to the teeth, XC and JDW entered the portal once more and fought the dragon. After a hard-fought battle, the dragon was defeated. XCC2 didn't really know about the Dragon Egg, so he left the end after the battle was over. But JD managed to grab the egg before leaving. And this is where the long journey of 2B2T's Dragon Egg begins. In the months following the death of the Ender Dragon, many other portals were built at bases all around 2B2T. House had been inactive for several months, so all of these things were happening without his knowledge. When he finally returned and realized that the end had been generated illegally, he became furious. He began going around the server deleting every end portal that had been created, and began removing portal frames from player inventories. He also deleted all the end stone that had been brought back from the end and placed in the world. And he made it so that any end stone that got placed would instantly vanish from here on out. A plugin was also installed so that right-clicking on a portal frame would make it disappear. Finally, House went in and completely deleted 2B2T's end dimension. He effectively made it so that the original slaying of the Ender Dragon never happened. The end had been hard reset. When it came to the egg, House had no idea who was in possession of it. He didn't have time to manually check every single player's inventory. He figured that it would get lost or destroyed on its own. House's reasoning was that, well, there was only one Dragon Egg. It's likely to have already been lost. Well, unknown to House, the egg still existed. And there wasn't just one. Remember when JDW took the egg from the original dragon fight? Well, in the months that followed, JD had been duping it. In early Minecraft, it was possible to use pistons to make copies of any block that was affected by gravity, such as gravel or sand. The Dragon Egg happened to be affected by gravity as well, and duping machines were used to make multiple copies of it. Hundreds of eggs were being produced each day and distributed amongst the elite players of 2B2T. By the time House went on his rampage destroying all traces of the original end, thousands of eggs were already in circulation without his knowledge. Despite there being thousands of eggs, the end dimension was still off limits to the player base. XCC2 got into contact with House and suggested to him he go to the spots where strongholds should have generated on 2B2T's map and use the /regenerate command in order to create fresh chunks that would include strongholds and portals. House actually listened and created the portals in the proper locations. He formally reopened the end, and players were finally publicly able to enter. Tristan, Talo, and a few others went in and killed the second Ender Dragon. Talo was given ownership of the second egg, which, like the first egg, would be duped into oblivion. From 2013 to 2016, massive piles of eggs began to show up in random places all over the map, likely being dumped by players that had too many of them. During this time, it wasn't uncommon for new players to stumble upon large piles of them while escaping spawn. By this time, both JDW and Talo's eggs had been duped so many times that the originals could no longer be identified. So I guess, in a way, you could say that both the original eggs had been lost at this point. House installed a plugin that made it so that having dragon eggs in your inventory would cause them to turn into stone. This plugin would be turned on and off throughout the years, depending on whether House felt like it or not, so it was never successful in preventing the spread of dragon eggs. For a time, nothing really changed regarding them. End portals were often griefed, 2B2T could go months at a time without proper access to the end dimension. At one point, the only way to get in was using private portals still left over from the plugin days. Regardless, dragon eggs remained a fun novelty and collectible item. But then, the YouTube invasion of 2016 began, and the server underwent massive changes that bring us into the next chapter of the Dragon Eggs journey. In the summer of 2016, when war consumed the entire server, it was a time of exploits, chaos, guerrilla tactics, and griefing. bases were falling every single week. Well, at some point during the summer, it was discovered that the Dragon Egg had a unique use that no other block in the game could do: destroy bedrock. From what I understand, if you had a redstone circuit that stretched all the way out to an unloaded chunk and had a Dragon Egg above a redstone torch, pushing it with a piston would cause it to delete the block directly under the torch, including bedrock. Players would use this technique to delete illegal bedrock that had been placed by players years previously. This included the Bedrock Comet, Pyro's bedrock placed in the center of Wrath Outpost, and Jack the Ripper's bedrock foundation at the original Space Falk. The Dragon Egg went from a novelty to a weaponized griefing tool. After word got out about the exploit, House temporarily brought back the plugin that turned eggs into stone blocks. But the damage had been done. Replicas of the very same egg JDW had claimed years previously had been used to grief something that used to be considered ungriefable. Eventually, the eggs would return to just being a fun novelty and trophy, and nothing more. That brings us to today. The Dragon Egg is still widely distributed amongst the 2b2t community. Currently, the Dragon Egg has no real use in Minecraft, but should the developers give it a use of some kind, there's no telling what ramifications it could have on 2b2t, considering just how many eggs there are. It's fun to think about. The Dragon Egg on 2b2t was smuggled out of the end illegally, duped countless times, and was eventually used as a tool of destruction. Only on 2b2t could a single egg have a history like this. I hope you learned something today. Well, anyway, that's it. For more 2b2t content, make sure to subscribe. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram to stay updated on when new 2b2t content is arriving. That's it, everyone. Take it easy, and if you plan to play on 2b2t, just make sure to stay alive out there, Fit Fam. Who was the king of the oldest anarchy server in Minecraft? Sounds like a ridiculous question, right? How does somebody rule a Minecraft server that has no rules? Well, when you've had hundreds of thousands of players over the years, there's bound to be a few that desire power, influence, and attention here on 2b2t. Today's video focuses on two individuals who both called themselves the king of 2b2t at one point. One's journey ended in disaster, and one went down as a 2b2t legend. There's a lot of history to cover today, so let's get started. When looking at the 2b2t timeline, everything that I discuss in today's video takes place between 2010 and early 2016. As this is the only time in the server's history where the player base was small enough to come to a consensus on anything. The first person to ever call himself king of 2b2t was a 2011 player named Chris Lighton. Old players recognize this name instantly because of what happened to him. His story serves as a cautionary tale to all new players, so if you are new to 2b2t, you should pay close attention to this one. Chris Lighton was your quintessential 2b2t player. He was toxic, enjoyed griefing, and was all around obnoxious. He would constantly spam the following phrase in chat: Chris Lighton is the king of 2b2t. And that last part, I'm sure you can fill in the blanks. But he spammed this phrase non-stop. And back in 2011, the /ignore feature did not exist yet, so players were forced to read these messages day in and day out. Just to get him to shut up, the player base at the time humored him and told him, "Yes, Chris, You are the king of 2B2T. And of course, it went to his head. He became one of the biggest griefers of 2011. He griefed spawn bases and took spawn killing so seriously that it was borderline obsessive. Some say that the 2B2T tradition of killing new players started with Chris. Back in 2011, instead of having a random spawn location within a certain radius of 00, everybody would spawn in the exact same spot. Chris was notorious for pouring lava over the entire area, burning new players alive instantly. Players that originally made fun of Chris for trying to be the king actually began to respect his dedication to making life on 2B2T miserable for new players. When he wasn't busy killing these new players, Chris actually did work on some projects. He was one of the first people to dig out tunnels near the nether ceiling. He actually helped dig out the early parts of what is now the infamous X Highway to the world border. Chris was the most notorious player of 2011, and he had achieved fame and notoriety on the server. He had obtained all the attention that he desired. But all of this attention came at a cost. Some players had grown so sick of Chris that they wanted to make him leave the server forever. After doing some basic research, the players discovered something shocking: the true identity of 2B2T's self-proclaimed king. It turns out that Chris Lighton was not just a Minecraft username. Chris Lighton was his actual name. Chris had doxed himself by using his real name as his Minecraft name, and the toxic player base of 2B2T took advantage. He was harassed to the point of quitting the server. This event would unfortunately set precedents for many more incidents like this to happen over the years, and is part of what gave 2B2T the reputation of being the world's worst Minecraft server. Chris had come to 2B2T begging for attention, and unfortunately for him, he got it tenfold. Chris's story is a cautionary tale for new players about why it's important to keep your personal details to a minimum when dealing with 2B2T. After Chris left the server for good, there would be many copycats throughout the years that would try and copy Chris's style and persona, even going as far as using his exact same messages in chat. But it wasn't until a few years later, until the next contender for king came along. Someone who I would argue came closest to being an actual king of 2B2T. Pyrobyte, the most legendary 2B2T player of all time, regarded by most old players as the true king of 2B2T. How did he get this reputation? Well, similar to Chris, originally, Pyrobyte was seen as an obnoxious player, but unlike Chris, Pyro was an actual computer hacker. He was able to make his own hack client and exploit the server in ways that had not been done before. In 2013, using a backdoor, Pyrobyte together with iTristan teleported to the world border, becoming the first players on 2B2T to see it with their own eyes. Pyro was also one of the creators of 2B2T's super weapons, the 32K items. Much like his predecessor, Chris, Pyro himself enjoyed griefing the spawn region and started the trend of naming withers after himself. He would name all of them. Pyrobyte is the king of 2B2T. He spawned them all over. I personally can remember New Year's Eve of 2014 going into 2015. I was on 2B2T that evening before heading out for festivities, and while I was playing, I was greeted with this sound. Pyrobyte spawned about 50 withers in the span of about a minute, all of them named after himself. Pyrobyte was also known to mess around on the nether roof before the plugin existed that kicked players off of it. Being a member of Valkyria, He established good relationships with the player base at the time. He would be a part of many bases in his time, but his leadership abilities truly began to shine when he was selected as one of the leaders of Asgard 2, the largest group base on 2B2T in 2015. Since the majority of the active player base lived at this base and saw Pyro as a true leader, most took Pyro's claim of being king as fact. He was a powerful player with backdoor access, but never used the access maliciously. Of course, like any ruler in real-life history, he was not perfect. While posting screenshots in a group Skype chat, Pyrobyte accidentally leaked the coordinates of Asgard 2. Pyro knew that his favorable reputation would suffer if the truth got out. Nobody could know that Asgard 2 was his fault, so he decided to hide the truth. His accidental leak was so well hidden that even I didn't know about it until years later. In fact, me finding out this revelation is part of what made me want to make this video in the first place, now that we finally know the truth behind Asgard 2. But telling us all that a coordinate leak had happened and that griefers were on their way, Pyro knew that if he could channel the base's energy and anger at something, it would make it easier for people to move on from Asgard 2. All of this would culminate into the creation of the third incursion at spawn. Since Pyro felt bad about causing Asgard 2 to fall, he wanted to give the base members a memory that they would never forget. So using his powerful repertoire of items, he utilized infinite blocks to help build one of the most famous structures in 2B's history, Wrath Outpost. Pyro proved his leadership abilities by turning what could be seen as a tragedy into one of the most positive experiences players had on the server. I still look back fondly at those times. In early 2016, Pyro quietly left 2B2T for good. In the community, there's this running joke that you can quit the server at any time, but you can never leave. Pyro is the exception to this rule. He deleted his GitHub and most traces of himself on the internet. He left the world of 2B2T behind, forever, and very few have heard from him since. The only active player on 2B2T that still has ties to Pyrobyte refuses to give up any details about him, and I can't say I blame him. Pyrobyte is the closest 2B2T has ever had to an actual king. He had immense power on the server, yet showed restraint in using it. He had the respect of the majority of the 2B2T player base, with most actually referring to him as king. If you want my opinion, I'd tell you that yes, he was the king of 2B2T. While there have been countless copycats of both Chris and Pyro over the years, none of the players could back up their claims of being the king. Now, with the player base being so large and divided on a multitude of issues, having the community agree on someone being king is borderline impossible. The era of kings on 2B2T is long gone, but it makes for an interesting memory and a very interesting story. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe and like the video. Also make sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. And you can follow me on Twitch to catch my weekly live streams every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But that's it for today's 2B2T video, everyone. I hope you learned a little something. And for you new players out there, I hope you learned a valuable lesson about what happens if you try to get too famous on 2B2T. So, take it easy, everyone. Stay alive out there, Fit Fam, and we'll see you next time. There is a war against trees on the oldest Anarchy server in Minecraft. Trust me, it's as ridiculous as it sounds. Grown adults systematically eliminating Minecraft trees through automation and